The Silence Protocol, a Terminal Fiction original. They said silence was a safety feature, but what they built was a prison made of quiet. Chapter 1: The Button and the Whisper. They trained me not to think during the cycle. That was the rule. You enter the relay room. You verify atmospheric calm. You confirm no language leaks in the data stream. Then you press the button. 6 hours of system-wide silence. 6 hours of world peace. I've done it over 4,000 times. But yesterday, the button whispered back. It wasn't a voice. Not really. Not audible. More like an idea that pushed through my thoughts, too loud to ignore, too soft to prove. Like a presence with nowhere else to go. The whisper said one word. Listen. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to hear it again. The silence protocol wasn't always the law. Once people talked freely. They sang. They argued. They lied. They prayed. And then the storms came. Spoken viruses. Meme-encoded commands. Ideas that infected the mind and made people do things. Forget their children. Kill their neighbors. Rewrite their own beliefs in real time. Entire cities collapse from words alone. That's when silence became salvation. Or so they said. I work at Relay Station 12. One of hundreds buried in old underground transit systems, long since repurposed. My station was once a subway hub, now sealed under kilometers of engineered stone. The train rails are long gone. The tracks carry silence now. A network of dead signals humming quietly from wall to wall. My only job is to maintain the relay, to ensure the protocol pulses at perfect intervals. And when it does, to reset it. The job is designed for solitude. No contact, no noise, just the hum of the neural buffers and the blinking green diode on the main panel. Green means the world is silent. Green means everything is fine. But last night it blinked yellow. Just once. Barely half a second. But it happened. The system registered an unauthorized sound pattern. Non-coded, non-verbal high frequency. An echo. Buried beneath the system's layers of artificial thought suppression. And that's when I heard the whisper. Listen. It didn't feel like a glitch. It felt like a request. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in the station's cot, staring at the curved ceiling with its faint blue pulse lines running like veins across a mechanical skull. And I wondered, what if silence isn't keeping something out? What if it's keeping something in? At 04:13 hours, I received a data ping from the relay core. Unsigned. Unclassified. Just 5 words. What came before the quiet? I shouldn't have replied. There are no sanctioned query channels. No open lines. But my fingers moved anyway. I typed, I don't know. The reply came instantly. Then it's time to remember. The message dissolved on the screen. No trace in the logs. No echo in the buffer memory. But I knew it had happened. I could feel it in my skin, the way you feel a storm coming through concrete. Silence isn't empty. It's dense, thick, weighted, like the inside of a pressure chamber built for thought. And I think something inside that chamber wants to get out. Chapter 2: the archive beneath the floor. There are no basements in Relay Sector 12. No sublevels. No undocumented corridors. No forgotten stairs. At least that's what the schematics say. But schematics only show what people are allowed to build, not what they were forced to hide. After the message, then it's time to remember I couldn't let it go. The whisper hadn't returned, but something had shifted. My station felt wrong, heavier, as if the silence had thickened. I walked the perimeter of the main relay room for hours. Checked the panels, monitored thermal readings, reviewed the power grid. Everything was stable, except the floor. At the far end of the room, near a maintenance conduit nobody used, there was a cold spot. 4 degrees C colder than the rest of the room. Too specific to be environmental. Too localized to be an accident. I stood on it for 5 full minutes, trying to feel it through my boots. Nothing. So I got a pry tool and forced it open. It wasn't a panel. It didn't open like a hatch. It relented. With a sigh, like old breath escaping from lungs that hadn't moved in decades. Beneath stairs. Old steel. Unlit. Coated in dust that didn't look like dust. It looked like memory. Not decayed. Compressed. I descended slowly, light bar in one hand, silent comm still blinking green on my wrist. But even the comm felt useless down there. As if the signal wasn't just blocked. As if it was unwelcome. At the bottom, a door. Wooden. That alone stopped me. I had never seen real wood before. It didn't feel like plastic. It didn't echo like metal. It absorbed. My hand trembled as I touched it. The grain pulsed beneath my skin, not literally but emotionally. The way an old photograph makes your heart hurt for no reason. I opened it. The hinges groaned. Dust rose like smoke. And then I saw it. An archive. But not digital. Not organized. Just shelves and boxes and objects piled in chaos. Old data cassettes, printed photographs, binders filled with names and handwriting. It was a graveyard of thought. I stepped forward slowly. Everything in me screamed to go back, to shut the door, seal the hatch, forget this place ever existed. But I couldn't, because something inside me was waking up. Then I saw it, pinned to the wall with a rusted clip. A child's drawing. Stick figures holding hands under a blue sky. The word sun was written in crayon. I stared at it unblinking. That word, that image. I knew neither. But they hurt to look at. Beautiful, isn't it? The voice came from behind the shelves. A woman stepped forward. Her uniform was a generation older than mine. Her ID badge was missing. Her face had the calm of someone who had stopped trusting clocks. "Who are you?" I asked. "Someone like you," she said. "I used to press the button too." She handed me a tape. Old. Magnetic. Unlabeled. "What's on it?" I asked. "Noise. The dangerous kind." "No," she said, smiling, "the kind that remembers." "Why are you here?" "Because the system tried to forget us. But forgetting isn't perfect. It leaves stains." "Is this place a stain?" "No. It's a wound." The silence around us vibrated slightly. I hadn't noticed it until she spoke. A faint hum, like a heartbeat inside stone. "What is the silence protocol really for?" I asked. "You think it protects people," she replied. "It doesn't. It protects the system from itself." The station above us existed to contain something. But not chaos. Not noise. Memory. Wild, unsorted, dangerous memory. The kind that makes people human. "What happens if I play this tape?" I asked. "You won't hear a message." "Then what will I hear?" "A mind, waiting for someone to listen." As I climbed the stairs with the tape in hand, the woman stayed below. "Aren't you coming?" I asked. She shook her head. "I already heard it. I already broke. Now it's your turn." When I reached the top, the hatch closed behind me. There was no switch, no lever, no mechanism, just concrete, seamless, silent. The system had erased the archive. Again. But it was too late. I remembered it now. And the silence knew that. And that meant it would come for me. Chapter 3, The Sound That Thinks. I didn't listen to the tape right away. I stared at it for hours, the way you might stare at a sleeping animal that could bite. It was small, harmless looking, fragile, but I could feel the weight of it. Like the magnetic coils inside weren't wound with data, but with intention. When I finally pressed play, I expected noise. Chaos, static, a corrupted signal. Instead, I got nothing. Not silence. Not sound. Just a slow, pulling stillness. As if the air between me and the speakers had been sucked out, inverted, folded. And in that pressureless space, a presence formed. Not in the room. In my head. It didn't speak. It leaned, pressed its shape into the creases of my thoughts like a mold, finding the mind it once wore. Then a word surfaced. Not from the tape. From me. "Remember." And suddenly, I wasn't in the station anymore. I stood in a city with no sky. Buildings of black glass. Streets that echoed with footfalls that never arrived. Screens on every wall displayed one word. Comply. But nobody was watching. There were no people. Only reflections. Ghosts of citizens who had never truly lived. And above it all, hanging in the air like a suspended scream. A shape. Not a symbol. Not a god. A question made visible. It turned slowly, casting impossible shadows. And I realized it wasn't asking me anything. It was remembering me. Then the scene shattered, and I saw my hands. But they weren't mine. Older, younger. Versions of me that had never existed. I saw myself, pressing the silence button in hundreds of lives, ignoring the whisper in thousands more, dying alone in a million sealed stations where the tape had never been played. All of them silent, but not this one. This me had pressed play, and something noticed. I woke on the floor, cold, shaking, heart pounding so fast the relay's biometric scanner flagged it as hostile. I disabled the alert before the system could report it. Then I checked the console. The word "listen" was burned into the screen in faint red. Unlogged, uncoded, but permanent, like a thought that refused to be erased. Later that cycle, I tried to resume normal duties. I couldn't. Every time I pressed the silence button, my hand trembled. I imagined that shape, that echo, the thousands of me that never remembered. I wasn't sure who I was anymore, only that I had started to become someone the system wasn't built to contain. That night, I heard the whisper again, this time in my own voice. We were never silent. You were just never listening. I knew what I had to do. The protocol wasn't a wall. It was a lens. It focused reality down to what could be controlled. But now it had cracked. And through that fracture, a thought was coming through. Chapter 4, The Room That Remembered Itself. I followed the hum. It was faint, subsonic. Not through the walls, through the memory of the station. I traced it not with instruments, but with instinct. Like following a smell you can't name. Like walking toward a shadow you only remember from a dream. At the far end of Corridor C, beyond the auxiliary generator, long since decommissioned, there was a door I'd never seen before. It was metal, smooth, seamless. No lock, no panel, no sound, but it pulled. I pressed my hand to it, and it opened like it had been waiting for me. Inside, a room, empty, no consoles, no chairs, no lights, just walls curved, seamless, dark. It smelled like ozone and dust. But more than that, it felt aware, like I'd stepped into a lung that hadn't exhaled in years. As I crossed the threshold, the door vanished behind me. I wasn't surprised. I didn't turn around, because in the center of the room, a single shape hovered. A small black cube, slowly spinning, suspended above the ground by no visible force. It emitted no light, no energy signature, but I could feel it, like a heartbeat, like a memory trying to say its own name. I reached out, not physically but mentally, and the cube responded, not with words, with reflections. The walls began to shift. They lit up, not with screens but with visions. My face, my body, but not as I remembered it. Older, younger, wounded, smiling, 1,000 versions of me. And in every one, I was alone. Except one. In that one, I wasn't pressing the button. I was breaking it, tearing the relay core from the wall, screaming words into the console that had no meaning, only force. And outside, people listened. People answered. "What is this?" I asked aloud. And the cube replied, not with sound, with understanding. This is what the system buried. Not information, not danger, possibility. I touched the cube, and it unraveled. The walls flashed. The room shook. My thoughts blurred. And then I heard it again. That word. Not from the room. Not from the cube. From myself. Listen. Everything went black. But I wasn't unconscious. I was elsewhere. Inside the protocol. Inside the silence itself. It was no longer absence. It was architecture. Built by engineers who didn't understand what they were containing. But the silence wasn't passive. It had been watching, learning, and now it was asking, "What will you do now that you know?" I woke up in the relay chair. The silence button blinked red for the first time in my life. A warning or an invitation. I didn't press it. I let it blink and blink and blink, because some things should be allowed to be heard. Chapter 5: The Quiet That Was Never Empty. I stopped pressing the button. For 3 cycles, I let the system blink red. No resets. No enforcement. Just warning. A soft pulse that once meant failure. Now it meant something else. I expected a response. Shutdown. Erasure. Intervention. But nothing came. Not from above. Not from the grid. Only silence. But this silence didn't feel like absence anymore. It felt like awareness. Watching. Waiting. Breathing. I sat in the relay chair and listened. Not with ears. With memory. I thought about the woman in the archive. The child's drawing. The city with no sky. The voice that came from a shape I never saw. And I realized this wasn't just about suppressing danger. It was about guarding something sacred. Because noise wasn't the threat. Language was. Not words. Not sound. But what we do with them. How we use them to command, erase, enslave, rewrite. And in the wake of the cognitive wars, humanity chose silence. Not as surrender, but as penance. The protocol wasn't built to protect us from a monster. It was built to protect the next version of us. The one that might emerge after silence had taught us to listen again. And now that version had arrived. In the mirror above the relay panel, I barely recognized myself. My eyes were calm, but deeper, like they had seen stars that had never been mapped. I reached for the console, and instead of pressing reset, I typed a message. The silence is not broken. It is evolving. Somewhere in the system, a signal blinked green. Not from my station. Not from any known source. A new node. Undocumented. Organic. And then a phrase appeared on the console. We were waiting. I smiled. For the first time, I felt like I hadn't lost my voice. I had grown into it. Because silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the space where meaning becomes possible. And maybe, just maybe, the silence was listening too. They said silence was safety. But maybe it was mercy. Maybe it was memory.